All right. We are live, Madam Chair. You can begin.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the board meeting of the Board of Governors and an update on integrations. We're webcasting this session so that everyone can view it, and we will archive it online so people can view it later if they would like. Before we get to the workshop portion of our meeting, we do have one action, which is the appointment of 2 students to the Board of Governors. So let me ask Sharisa to please take the roll.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Thank you. Governor Robert Bogle, Representative Tim Briggs,
Here.
Governor William Gindelsberger,
And Bill is here. I
he
saw.
is here. Secretary Allison Jones, Designee Tara Williams, Senator Scott Martin.
Kara is here. I saw her too.
Okay. Governor David Mazer,
Present.
Governor Mary Moskowitz, Secretary Ortega, Designee Tanya Garcia,
Here.
Representative Brad Roy,
Here.
Senator Judith Schwank, Chair Shapira,
Here.
Governor Skinner, Governor Smith,
And it looks like we have a couple more joining.
okay,
We'll just give them a moment. Looks like
Sure.
Senator Martin
Senator Martin, all right,
and Governor Moskowitz is joining, and
okay,
Secretary Jones is joining.
all right, great, thank you.
And it looks like Governor Skinner
Washington,
joined. Just give them a
Here.
moment.
all right, thank you. Governor Neil
Randy, did
Weaver?
you get me?
We did, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you. Governor Neil Weaver, Governor
Here.
Janet Yeomans,
Here.
Randy answered, I'm sorry, Neil answered present.
all right, thank you.
Wasn't sure you heard that.
And Faculty Liaison Jamie Phillips,
Here.
thank you. We have a quorum, thank you.
Thank you very, very much appreciated. So before we get started with our board meeting today, a few things have been going on in Harrisburg in the past week, and I want to acknowledge the incredibly hard work of so many people who have helped the state system achieve the budget allocation that was passed by the General Assembly just this past weekend. Most notably, we're so grateful for the $50 million of new funds that will go toward our system redesign efforts. This represents the first installment of a $200 million investment by the Commonwealth that it intends to make over the next few years. And it also represents a vote of confidence in our efforts to redesign the system for the future. This would absolutely not have been possible without the leadership of the governor and without the bipartisan support from the House and Senate leadership and membership. So to all of them, to each of them, we thank you so much. I also want to thank our board members, university presidents, trustees, our statewide union leaders, and so many others for working with us to secure this much needed investment in the system. And finally, of course, let me thank Dan and his team who persistently advocated and continue to advocate on our behalf in Harrisburg. So I just also want to say, Dan, you know, I've been with you in many meetings over the past few weeks, particularly in discussions around that budget allocation, and your candid, transparent, and data-driven approach to our challenges has been critically important, and I think truly appreciated by everyone with whom we've met. Now we have to make sure that we put these funds to good use as we continue transforming our system for the future. And because these are one-time dollars, we must make smart strategic investments that will help move our system forward and create greater stability for decades to come. And there is no doubt in my mind that we will do that. And in fact, because of stakeholder engagement regarding integrations, we've heard more about the needs of our stakeholder groups, students, faculty, staff, trustees, our labor forces, elected officials, community members, all of them as they look to the future. And I also have to say, the main thing I got out of the public commentary is how much people love and cherish and believe in this system and in its mission and in our students. So we know we won't be able to address every single need to the extent possible. There is never enough resources in terms of time, talent, or treasure for that, but we will tackle those that have the greatest impacts on our students, our faculty, our staff, and our other stakeholders. And in today's presentation, we will see how we're already addressing some of these issues that have been brought up in the integration plans themselves, and that's just the start. In a very real sense, we can harness all of this energy to build a coalition for the continued redesign and for the continued advocacy for our system, balancing the interests of our stakeholders with those of the system as a whole. And that, to me, is also a major takeaway, that when we want to and when we keep our focus on the greatest goal that we want to achieve, we can come together. We may not agree on every issue, but we can work together and work and build a coalition together. And so, again, I'm grateful that we have these additional financial resources. I am grateful for the commitment that I saw, for the great ideas, and for the desire to really move this system forward and do the best that we can with our students and enroll every single student who wants to take advantage of our incredible education system. So, Dan, do you want to add anything before we start?
Taking myself off mute. Thanks, Chair. Just maybe quickly to echo your thanks, and maybe to extend them to you and to the board and to our trustees and our university leadership and our faculty and our staff and our students, all of who've really engaged in a years-long advocacy effort that has resulted in this unprecedented ask, originally made in 2020 appropriations request and leading to this very favorable budget. Not just the 50 million one time, but the commitment to an additional 150 over the next few years. I just wanted to call out the fact that that effort was begun by you and the board back in 2016, sort of in the genesis of system redesign, and it was conducted over these years, engaged by all of us, by all of those folks mentioned above, together and often sometimes at least apart. It rests on some critical planks: transparency about the tremendous benefits we provide the Commonwealth, the engine of social mobility and economic development, but also transparency about our challenge. It rests on accountability for our actions and the results we get through them for the taxpayer and our students and employers and communities. And it has involved our listening, and again, all of us, and courageously responding to very real concerns expressed by members of the General Assembly, but also students, parents, employers, members of the community, concerns about student affordability, responsiveness to employer needs, and about our costs. And we're making progress, as testified in this budget, in advancing and understanding that public higher education is genuinely a partnership between, in our case, this system and its universities on the one hand, and the state through the General Assembly on the other. And that partnership, I think, got strengthened significantly over the last several weeks. And I look forward to continuing that progress. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan. Appreciate those remarks. As I mentioned, the only vote we will be taking today is the appointment of 2 students to fill the seats left vacant after Alex and Nicole graduated last month. So because we are taking that action today, we'll provide an opportunity for comment from union leaders and the public. That is, just to remind people, that is a mainstay of the agenda when we have a public board meeting. So let me first see if there are any of our statewide union leaders who have comments today.
No, I think Dr. Martin does.
Great. Thank you. Jamie?
Thank you. And thank you, Randy. Chairman Shapira, Chancellor Greenstein, governors, and guests. I will keep my comments brief today as we are all eager to hear how you have incorporated the hundreds of comments, concerns, and suggestions about the plans to consolidate 6 universities into 2. I hope that everyone will be able to digest all of the feedback available from a variety of sources. The most important theme from the comments was concern for the impact on our students. Speaker after speaker expressed concerns about the difficulties that students faced in taking their courses via distance learning during the pandemic. These included a lack of broadband access, distractions at students' residences that interfered with their classes, declining participation and engagement, and a resulting decline in performance. Many commenters wondered how a forced hybrid model at the new U will affect the residential experience of our students and how that may impact enrollments. A recent study which the state system conducted provides a clue. The Blue Beyond Consulting Group conducted this survey at the 3 northern universities slated for consolidation. More than 1,300 students from Bloomsburg, Lock Haven, and Mansfield responded to it. And one of the first questions was this: imagine you are a potential incoming student for fall 2022. With the new integrated university, you would have an expanded selection of majors to choose from, but may have to take some of the classes via distance learning. How might the new array of offered programs and majors affect your decision to attend the integrated university? The response to that question should raise some concern, as approximately 60% of all students said they would be less likely to attend the new U. Commenters wondered aloud about the program arrays that will exist across the campuses. They asked questions about the location of departments at the new U's. There are unanswered questions about the impact of consolidation on accredited programs, about the decision of the NCAA regarding athletic teams at the 6 campuses, and about the number of online courses that students will be required to take. I think that we all agree that we must work together to improve our state system of higher education, and APSCUF is committed to partnering in that work. However, we believe that rather than doing something, we should all strive to be certain that it is the right thing. Students deserve answers to important questions, some of which I highlighted. Students at the 6 affected universities deserve face-to-face town hall meetings when they return to campus in the fall. Based on the results of the student survey, it's imperative that student voices be heard and their questions and concerns answered. If student input is not considered and there are enrollment declines at the new U's, how does that benefit them? How does it benefit our students who rely on our universities in our state system to complete their degree and to improve their lives? Our students are the reason our state system exists, and we should all be willing to provide them an opportunity for input and answers to the questions. I want to thank you for your time, and I hope that all of you continue to be well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Todd Spaulding.
Yes, thank you. First, I'd like to congratulate the 2 new student trustees on their appointments, and also thank the legislature for their increased funding for the upcoming year. My name is Todd Spaulding, and I'm the statewide president for the State College and Universities Professional Association, better known as SCUPA, representing 700 plus employees within the state system. SCUPA is a deliberative body, and we believe in hearing people out in their plans before we make decisions on whether or not to support them. We have listened and actively participated in discussions from the very beginning of the process. SCUPA realizes and understands that there are issues that need to be addressed by a multitude of avenues, such as increased state funding, changes at universities, retraining of employees to work in different areas, and so forth. We have deliberately kept a calm approach to this process until we've had a chance to review the presented plans. When the time comes, we are asking that the Board of Governors delay their final decision until there is sufficient information in the plans to address the many concerns brought up by the stakeholders. We surveyed our membership and found that SCUPA is not able to support these plans as written. There are too many unresolved issues at this time. Some of the issues include online learning issues. If we've learned anything from the past year, it's that online learning is not for every student, and forced online learning presents significant academic risks for students. We need to analyze the data from the past year and find solutions to those issues before we move forward. The impacts on the students have not been fully explored and solutions found. Economic impacts on the communities have not been explored. Reorganization plans have not been laid out in full to see the impact on the employees. PASHE and the Board of Governors do not have final decisions from the NCAA on athletics or their accreditation on the new entities. There are a large number of debt issues that are not addressed in either plan. Respectfully, there are too many unanswered questions to approve these partially developed plans, in our opinion. We cannot support a gamble of this magnitude that affects the futures and well-being of many students, employees, communities, and universities. We are being asked to just have faith that these plans will work and that all these issues will be addressed accordingly. Unfortunately, there have been too many times that we have seen changes that were supposed to fix our universities and they did not work. For example, we were told for years that if we built housing with all the amenities that you could imagine, we would be overflowing with new students. But what did we get? Massive amounts of debts, housing that we cannot fill, and less students. We are asking the Board of Governors when the time comes to delay their final decision until the plans are reworked. The SCUPA membership is here and ready to get to work. This is too important and we need to get it right. We owe it to our students, universities, communities, and our employees. Thank you for your time and we look forward to working with you to resolve the issues facing our universities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your remarks. Are there any public comments? Randy, anybody?
Sure. Yeah, I'll take that moment. So for members of the public, according to our sunshine notice, you are asked to dial into the public comment line, and you can just click *9 to raise your hand. And Madam Chair, I believe we're allowing 15 minutes for public comments in this 90-minute meeting. Is that correct? Great. So we'll ask commenters to try to keep your comments to 2 to 3 minutes. That'd be helpful. That way everyone has a chance to speak. So I will click allow to talk and you'll be able to speak. We're going to start with a caller from area code 610, whose last 3 digits is 882. When you start, please state your name for the record and offer your comments. You might have to click *6 to unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Monica Zhang, and I represent PASHE Defenders and the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I'm a student at Westchester University, and I'm imploring the 2 new student leaders today and Stephen Washington to please vote no. And Representative Briggs, thank you for voting no the first time. Please, everyone continue to vote no or for a delay on this consolidation plan. There's 277 people watching on YouTube, and I know the Board of Governors has heard all 4 public comment periods. There were 123 people who spoke, and only 1 person was even vaguely against this plan. This plan has not been well thought out. You have heard all of our comments over and over, all of our opinions saying the same thing. It's not thought out. You don't have answers from the NAACP. I'm sorry, it's very early. I work 4 to 8 to try and, in the morning, to try and afford my education. So I'm pretty pissed that this is happening. You haven't heard from the NCAA yet. One of the schools that is slated to be consolidated at Lock Haven is 27% student athletes. And I think you owe those 27%, almost 1,000 students, an answer about whether or not there's going to be sports in the fall. I think you owe the 1,500 people who are going to be laid off and all the other people who are being affected by budget cuts and retrenchments a clear plan forward. I think you owe everybody an explanation as to why this is happening when there's a $3 billion surplus in the state legislature that could easily fund the institutional debt and just, fill the gaps in, the financial gaps in that you say are the driving forces behind this plan. So to the 287 people watching on YouTube Live, if you are against this plan, we're having a rally. PASHE Defenders and PSL is having a rally in Harrisburg on the Capitol steps at 2 p.m. Saturday, July 10th. We're looking for speakers. Again, that's Saturday, July 10th, right before the vote, which we're not even sure which day the vote is going to be because it's the 14th or the 15th. So hope to see you out there. If you would like to get involved or be a speaker, it will be live streamed. There will be press. Please email pashdefenders@gmail.com or call me directly 610-574-1882. Thank you.
Monica. Next, we'll go to a caller from area code 610, whose last 3 digits are 509. And you might need to click *6 to unmute. And just state your name.
Hello?
Yeah, if you could start with your name.
Okay. Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Nick Marcel. I'm a graduate student at Westchester University. I'm currently cutting grass, just like you're cutting public higher education, but that's not important. I don't understand if anyone decides to vote for this plan. How many people does it take for you all to understand at the Board of Governors and the state system and the Chancellor's office that this is a bad plan? It needs to be delayed. I think it's ridiculous that there's this idea that there's been transparency and accountability when it's taken so long to get people's public comments that are public, okay? And that you're giving us 15 minutes in total to speak. That's absurd. You owe us more than that. You owe us actually fighting for a fully funded state system, not this one-time 50 million. And I understand it's going to be 150 million over the next however many years. That's not important. You're not actually helping to fund the day-to-day operations of these universities. Myself as a student, many other students, faculty and staff are outraged and are urging a delay or to vote no. That's what you need to do if you actually want to listen to the people of the Commonwealth, the people of the state system, and the real stakeholders within these universities. I really hope that all the Board of Governors are listening, and I really hope that you vote no, because it's unclear to me why anyone would be for this plan. You heard over 100 people during the 4 public comment hearings say that they were against this plan. It's time to vote no. And it's time, Chancellor Greenstein, to not be on your phone during public comment hearings. That was unprofessional, and that was just absurd. If you want to treat us with respect, please do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick. Next, we're going to a caller from area code 570, whose last 3 digits is 552. You'll need to press *6 to unmute. And just start with your name.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jocelyn Lunny. I am a union leader, but I'm not calling today for that reason. So I am the associate manager of the Pennsylvania Joint Board of Workers United, SEIU. We represent many of the food service workers on campuses across the state. And of course, we're concerned for our members and what is going to happen as a result of this plan. We can see that this is moving towards closure of beautiful campuses that is going to decimate the area communities. But again, that's not why I'm calling today. I am a parent. I have 2 kids that are currently in college. So I've just recently gone through this process. My son picked his school quickly. My daughter was undecided. She knew what her major was going to be, but couldn't pick a school. So we toured lots and lots of schools. She applied to them. She got into them. But ultimately, when we had to sit down and look at the cost of what it would be for us to go to a state school, which ranged between $22,000 and $28,000, depending on the dorming situation, she's going to, and she went to a private school. So in comparison, she did have offers where she could have gone and stayed on campus from private institutions in the state of Pennsylvania, where we would have only paid about $7,000. That's not what she picked. She picked Marywood University. She got assistance from them, and because she is an excellent student, and we paid $13,000 last year for her education. Now, when we were touring these schools, we looked at a bunch of things. Like I said, she knew what her major was going to be. She's going into medicine. She wanted biology. So of course we were looking at that. And you want to make sure that your major, when you're picking a school, is somewhere where you're comfortable. every single one of your tour admissions people would say, because I've heard this over and over again, pick a school based on where you can see yourself. They don't say pick a school where you can see yourself online in front of a computer. They say, imagine you're on campus, imagine the feeling, imagine, you know, the experience you're going to have here, all of the other things that go along with the education. So of course you're going to look at that. Of course you're going to look at the reputation of the school, the relationships they have, the relationships that they have with employers as well. And I don't think that's lacking in the PASHE schools. So I guess my first point is that $50 million is great, but it should be an investment in the schools to help lower tuition for parents. It's not an issue of not being able to attract students because of the quality of the school, the atmosphere on the campus. It's an issue of, for me and for my family, not being able to afford the tuition to send her to that school. You know, reducing this plan is just going to reduce choices for students. When you, the past year, again, 2 kids in college, they absolutely have had a lot of difficulty. I said my daughter's an excellent student, so is my son. They really struggle with doing online learning. There's so much that you don't realize being in a classroom that you pick up, including even just meeting other people. So having some majors and some classes only available online, when you talk to students, and of course I talked to my kids about this and said, you know, how would you feel about that? They absolutely don't like it. So this is a plan that is going to reduce students coming because they're going to be concerned about this. Third, you know, the campuses are beautiful. In particular, I absolutely love the Lock Haven campus. I always have. This, you know, we've seen that the buildings have changed, the campus has changed. You know, I drive through there on a regular basis and actually even do some training programs there. And you have this incredible investment in these institutions, and yet there's a plan that is absolutely going to result in closure of these schools. And, you know, I'm not going to rehash the things that everybody else has said, but the students that are going there, part of the reason they go to campuses like Lock Haven is because of the environment that they're in, the lack of distraction in the town, all of those things. Again, it's going to have a result in, you know, it's going to result in difficulty for the community as well. And finally, being a parent in this age group, I talk to parents and students all of the time. So knowing, you know, kids that have graduated that are already in school who are attending PASHE schools, and then also going to graduation parties this year. Every time I run into somebody and they tell me where they're going to school, I say, hey, do you guys know about the PASHE redesign? Do you know what's happening? Do you know that, you know, these are the things that could come out of this? I have not encountered one person, not one parent, or one student who knows anything about this. And I'm talking about students currently attending these campuses in Pennsylvania, and one's planning to go, you know, looking at, yeah, this is what we're going to do. I'm looking into these schools. And when you talk about transparency, if you really, really want to have transparency, the students need to know. The parents need to know. This needs to be explained to people. I understand, you know, a huge report that people are going to read through, that's not going to be something that's going to be digestible for people to understand what the impact on their students is going to be. I didn't go to any tours this year, but I doubt that was something that was presented in the tour for parents to really understand what the impact of making a commitment to an institution, which, you know, you want to stay at. Nobody wants to go to a school and then have to change a year later or 2 years later, or find out that their education has been impacted because this is something that's just not going to work for them. So as a parent and as a union leader, of course, I'm encouraging you to vote no on this plan. And if you don't find that you're able to do that at this point, please delay it so that people really can understand what's happening here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jocelyn. And our last speaker will be Susan. Susan?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. My name is Susan Rutledge. I'm from Cal U, and I ask that you vote no on this proposed plan. It is not transparent. It is rushed. You haven't gotten any information whatsoever from the NCAA. And as far as speaking to the whole parent issue, I'm a parent of college-age students as well. The information is not transparent. I'm also an advisor of over 90 some students at Cal U. Very few of my students, if any, when I bring up the idea of consolidation, know what is going on and why consolidation is being shoved down our throats in such a rapid, unprofessional manner. At the end of the day, you're making decisions based on tiny bits of data that are supposed to give you a good picture. Well, I'm a researcher. I can read data too, and I can crunch numbers as well. That's my job. I'm part of accreditation. I'm part of advocacy. I'm part of all of this. And the data sets that you're using are not representing the full picture, particularly when we have a board of governors that essentially have abdicated their responsibility to ensure that the PASHI system is fully funded while we're still paying for private institutions. You got $200 million paid out over 4 years to integrate, to consolidate. But darn Skippy, we're going to give money to Penn State, Lincoln, and Temple, and Pitt so that they can carry on normal everyday functions. At some point, this speak that you have about how the PASHI institutions are awesome and we're great and we're doing wonderful things needs to be backed up with money and supports that take care of our debt and help our institutions thrive and grow so that we can be successful in the future. Collaboration and cooperation are one thing and can be very helpful, but consolidating these universities will severely impact our local communities. You will lay off people, whether our leadership are guaranteeing that our students and faculty or our faculty and staff will not be laid off. They have no guarantee. They cannot promise these things. And yet they are to try to allay our fear. At the end of the day, come to my classroom, see my students, talk to my students, talk to me, see what I do. You're telling me I'm not doing anything to bring us into the future when you're telling me that my university has to be consolidated. At the end of the day, you need to vote no on this. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Randy, is there further public comment?
No, those were all the hands raised. Thank you.
Okay, I very much appreciate all of your commentary. I want to assure you that we are listening and listening to everybody. Our only action item today on the agenda is the appointment of 2 student members. So let me now turn to Sam Smith, Chair of the Governance and Leadership Committee, for that item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just start off before I make note of who we've recommended, who the committee's recommended, just to kind of give us a little history of how we got here. As you know, the system operates under Act 188. And while that legislation was being considered for some other changes and amendments, the system offices had conversations with the governor and the governor's office about changing the appointing process for the council of trustees members as well as board of governors members. Oftentimes these students serve only 1 or 2 years, occasionally 3 years. So quite a bit of turnover, and that creates a little bit of process of how governor's appointments are handled. And so it takes some time. And oftentimes it costs the students who have the opportunity to serve on the council of trustees or the board of governors, costs them opportunity, to be there and be part of that. So in addition to the appointment process, there was also some changes to the scope of what students are eligible. It used to be that only student body presidents could be eligible for the Board of Governors. And that's been now expanded basically to any student enrolled in Apache University is essentially eligible with some other requirements in terms of their grades and things of that nature, full-time status and all that. Today, although we've appointed a few council trustees members at the various universities, this will be the first time that we will be appointing student Board of Governors members. And in accordance with the updated Act 188, we sought the input from the university presidents, inviting them to nominate one student from each from their university to be considered by the board. The presidents were given flexibility to recruit and vet those students, much as they do their own council trustees at the local level. And of course, our presidents understood that that the diversity in terms of the gender, the race, the age, geography, area and level of study, other things of that nature were important. But we did want to have a wide range of student voices on the board. We want a mix of students who are involved in student government or not involved in student government. Consequently, we received 13 nominations, which the Governance and Leadership Committee members narrowed down to a list of 5. Those 5 were interviewed by myself, by Chair Shapira, by the Chancellor and the Deputy Chancellor. And I would like to add parenthetically that all 13 of the nominations were exemplary students, and frankly, probably any one of them we'd have all been very comfortable with them. It's a tough decision, just when you look at the different characteristics, talents, and skill sets that these students bring to the Board of Governors. But I just want to encourage those that we did not select, not to take anything away from you. But based on the recommendations of the presidents, the strength of their applications, and the interview process, we're honored to recommend that the board appoints Zacharias Scott of Bloomsburg University and Alexander Roberts of Edinburgh University as members of the Board of Governors. Zachariah is a rising junior majoring in English at Bloomsburg, and Alexander is a rising senior majoring in political science at Edinburgh. So, Madam Chair, that concludes my report, and those are the recommendations of the Governance and Leadership Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam, very much for that recommendation. So before I put forward a motion, are there any other nominations? Okay.
No hands raised.
No hands raised. Okay, hearing none, I move that the Board of Directors appoints Zacharias Scott of Bloomsburg University and—
Madam Chair, it's Board of Governors. That's all right.
What did I say?
Directors, that's all right.
Sorry about that. Let me start all over again. I move that the Board of Governors appoint Zacharias Scott of Bloomsburg University and Alexander Roberts of Edinburgh University as members of the board in accordance with the state system's enabling legislation as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Many seconds. Thank you. Any further discussion?
Yeah, but I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, very impressive applicants. I actually read through the resumes and letters from all 13 applicants, and Eagle Scouts, salutatorians from high school, Dean's List students now, NCAA athletes. Very impressive young people. My question is, there's 13 applicants. I went through them one by one, and I think Cheney was the one where there wasn't. Every university except Cheney had an applicant. Is there a reason why Cheney didn't have one?
This is
Randy, do you want to explain the process?
Yeah, we need to.
Sure. We invited all the presidents, and I know President Walton is on as well. He can speak to that. We invited all the presidents to offer a candidate. And when we spoke last with President Walton, they were in the middle of looking for a candidate for their Council of Trustees and were not able to field a separate candidate for the Board of Governors. And of course, President Walton, you can speak further to that if you like. It was not required for all the universities to provide a nominee, but it was invited. President.
Randy, that's exactly right. We thought that we felt it was more important for us to have someone at the local level representing the university than put our efforts at the board at this point. So we will have someone in the future, but we're trying to take care of our local needs.
Okay, yeah, I think the two that got nominated for the meeting today are excellent choices, as well as the ones that did not get picked. I just wanted to make sure that all of our students at all of our university, have the opportunity when it arises. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Roy. I think that's a great point. I'm glad you made it. And actually, I'm glad we had the opportunity to discuss a little bit more what the process is, and for President Walton to explain his campus as well with regard to the nominations process. Oh, I don't think we took a vote yet.
You're just finishing discussion.
For any further discussion or questions? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 And are there any opposed? All right.
Madam Chair,
Yes. Yes,
as
Ms.
the newly appointed member of the board, I have not completed my orientation. Therefore, I wish to abstain.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Bogle. Randy, what does that mean in terms of Robert's rules? Do we have to do a roll call vote since there was not a unanimous?
Actually, Mr. Bogle, our rules don't allow board members to abstain from a vote.
Yeah.
So that's, you can either, you either have to vote or not vote. Vote yay or nay.
I regret that that's part of the rules, but I will adhere to the judgment of the members of the board, and I will vote yay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Mr. Bogle. And thank you, Randy. I've learned yet again something new today. So thank you very much. I guess in my 6 years, I've never had a board member voice to abstain. So 5 years. Okay, Zachary and Alexander, you are with us today. And let me say on behalf of the board, congratulations. We're so delighted that you're joining us. And we look forward to seeing you at our next board meeting. Randy, I'm not sure how we were doing with time. We were going to ask each of our new student governors to say a few words, but we may have gone too long with public comment, may need to hold that for the next meeting.
Yeah, we are running over by about 15 minutes, so maybe we could do that at the next meeting.
All right, so I hope the two of you will forgive me, and we will have our opportunity to hear from you at our next board meeting, which is only 2 weeks away. Thank you very much. All right, we are now spending the rest of our time in a workshop mode, hearing an update on the integrations effort, focusing on how the public comments received thus far have led to updates in the plans that will come back to the board next month for consideration. Because we continue to be in a public meeting that is properly noticed, board members are free to speak as you wish. You may ask questions, you may make comments, whatever you need in order to be well prepared for when the updated integration plans come back to us next month. And let me get it started, this portion of the meeting, by turning it over to Dan to lead the briefing.
Great, thanks so much. And governors, if you're okay and Chair, I think what I'm going to do is go through the changes that we'll be making, additional changes that we're making to the plan. We presented a bunch last month. We'll focus on a new bunch this month, and also look at the new information that we've commissioned in response to comments that we got in the early part of this public review period. There's not going to be a huge amount of time for discussion, although please interject with questions, as burning questions as they occur. There will be ample time for discussion at the July 14th meeting, and of course this deck and all the associated materials will also be available immediately after this meeting for members to consider. So I just want to check in with folks. It's sort of a struggle between wanting to go through all the information and also having comments and questions about it, or just ground you in what you're about to see in the plan. And I'm going to tilt towards the latter unless there's strenuous objection. And hearing none, let me begin, but again, please interject. So Randy, I'm just gonna, let's pretty much go to the introduction. So we're gonna spend all of our time really on the plan updates and the additional information in those last two bullets. The next several slides, Randy, why don't we just tick through them? You saw them last time. They go through the why of integration, the what of integration, the how of integration. We've got information on activities that we've engaged in since May. We talk about the public comment period, and maybe pause on slide 9, Randy, which is what you should expect to see. Next month, you'll see a revised plan, which will be available as a clean version, as a track change version, and you will see a version of this deck, which comprehensively catalogs the changes that we're making in response to public comment. So let's go to slide 10, which is an overview of the comments that we've received to date. We've loaded 2 batches of comments, and these numbers actually go up to comments received as of June 24th. So we will load another batch of comments and update this table in advance of the board meeting with any comments we received from June 24th to the end of the public comment period. But you can see here, there are about 600 comments overall. It's impossible to deduplicate them because many of them are not associated with names, et cetera. And the comments are all available for people to review and do what they wish. We tended to group them into 3 categories. The vast majority were viewpoints about the plan, like it, don't like it, et cetera. Some 100 and some comments were really things that were already addressed in the plan, but maybe required some clarification in the FAQs or whatever. So they're quite helpful. I mean, they're all helpful, but these were also helpful in helping us think about how to communicate about the work that we're doing. And then obviously the last section is the actionable comments which have resulted in adjustments to the plan. We did the same, if you go to the next slide, we did the same with the information that we gleaned from the public hearings. And there you can see we had 102, and then we could deduplicate because the public hearings were public, and so they were not anonymous. And so you see that there. So the process, at least in my, I want to pause here, has been a good one. Frankly, I'm grateful to the framers of Act 50 for thinking of it and writing it into the legislation. I think that through it, we have identified, stakeholder needs and priorities in a way that I think, honestly, without this process, we would have missed. We have learned where we needed to clarify as well as revise, not just the plan, but the way we present its goals and its paths. And as the board chair said earlier, I think through the process, we've really begun to extend and build the coalition that we're going to need to affect not only integration should the board decide to go there, but also our overall system redesign. And I would also like to think that through this process, at the end of this sort of 3-year-long advocacy, we have begun to land with our colleagues in the General Assembly the points about not just the tremendous value that Pennsylvania State System universities offer to the state students and its communities, but also their needs. And the point that those needs must be addressed through our partnership with the General Assembly, our role being that of effective management, responding effectively to the changing needs of our students and communities, and the General Assembly's responsibility being its investment. And I also want to contextualize some of the last 2 slides. So, if you put them together, and again, remember, you can't really deduplicate the comments received by email and web. We've received maybe 700 comments. So let's say 700. Probably, again, less than that because of the duplication. But I want to set that against a universe of 10,000 employees, 93,000 students, and over 500,000 alumni in a state with 13 million people, all of whom have a stake in their public higher education system. And I am aware of the narrative out there which suggests that this was all done in the cover of darkness, without letting anybody know, the transparency, and hence the very limited response. But the narrative is not grounded. With respect of the hearings, we alerted people about them through email, websites, blogs, and they were widely reported in the media in the weeks leading up to them. With respect of the overall process, Randy, if you want to go on to the next slide, here's a summary of efforts that I have visibility into. They've been conducted since about 2020 and September 2020, the last 9 months. I'm not going to tick through them. You can see for yourselves just an extensive And this is again at the system level, mostly out of my office. This is mostly from my calendar, but the real work was done, Randy, if you go to the next slide, at the university and the regional levels. You know, engagement was dense, it was rich, it was constant, it was widely covered by the media, local, state, and national. And no, it didn't leave out students. Students were included as close-in partners. In fact, I believe in the West, they went so far as to survey students, asking them how they wanted to be communicated with, and then they built their communications and engagement plan accordingly. I myself am a student. I'm a student of the early American Republic, and as such, I'm very familiar and actually quite fond of its authors. James Fenimore Cooper, Washington Irving. Irving's Legend of Sleepy Hollow provides powerful insights into the way of the early American people and tightly knit communities on the cusp of profound and unsettling and uncertain changes. And yes, of course, like Irving's Ichabod Crane, a whole bunch of folks in contemporary Pennsylvania woke up to and chose to take notice of integration planning process after it had reached an advanced stage. And if you believe Irving, who himself is a student of the American mind, early American culture, that is not at all surprising. In some ways, it's very typical. But I hope we won't mistake the pattern of engagement that Irving writes extensively about in the Legend of Sleepy Hollow in the process, with the process and the availability of information about it. So let me go on to the response. I'm going to really spend a lot of time on this slide. I won't go through everything, but go through so the significant changes, and again with enormous gratitude to the many people who have participated in testimony and in providing comments in legislative meetings, both publicly and privately, in community town halls and so many other settings. The greatest single revision, I guess, so I'll pause here, is arguably this one. It's extending the timeline for curriculum integration. Let me explain what that means. So the plan as submitted in April includes information about the so-called academic program array. That's the degrees and the majors and the minors and the areas of concentration that would be available in an integrated institution. We've also recently shared with faculty, it's not in the plan, but we've recently shared a draft of the proposed academic organizational structures, the schools and departments, the deans, chairs, faculty, and we'll continue to refine that in consultation. And what remains within that context is to determine the curriculum. And that's what I'm referring to here. And that's really the requirements and the courses for each of the academic programs, the degrees, the majors, the minors, and in what modalities they'll be taught. That process, that curriculum integration process, is one for which the timeline is being extended. It will closely involve faculty, enable us to sift through and integrate and build upon existing course level options and faculty expertise, and ultimately provide greater opportunity for our students, I believe also for our faculty. So why are we making these changes? Because we listen. We listen to the faculty who urge more time in curriculum integration so we can develop a better, more thoughtfully crafted integrated curriculum. This adjustment obviously allows for that. We also listen to students, current and prospective, who wanted greater clarity about their paths to graduation, and this adjustment will allow for that too. Associated milestones for key aspects of the plan will be adjusted accordingly, and that will include things like information technology, student recruitment, enrollment plans. There is no impact on the middle stage submission process, on the appointment of integrated leadership team, the start date of an integrated entity. So again, just summarizing here, we're looking for a process of curriculum integration that will last over a 3-year period, helping us to build not only the best possible curriculum, but also begin to integrate our cultures and begin to expand and extend the opportunities we provide for our students at all of the 6 universities in the 2 integrations. So the next, I guess, bullet is also, I think, pretty significant. A lot of clarification you'll see in the plan about how the curriculum will be delivered through the use of online technologies. Notably with regard to the relatively limited overall reliance on online modalities for residential students. We've said this a number of times, but I think clarified it in what you'll see in the presentation of the plan. 75% of our students at any one campus major in 7 or 8 programs, and those, of course, will be available on each of the integrating campuses. So the reliance on online is quite limited. We've also addressed the perception that came across in so many of the comments that we received that somehow online and Zoom are the same. That's not true. Obviously, as we shifted to deal with the pandemic, we had to rapidly evolve our practice like in a week in order to accommodate our students and to ensure that they can make timely progress towards their degree. That's fundamentally different than really developing best of breed online and hybrid capabilities, which is what we're planning to do here. And of course, we'll also include as a consequence of this, the kinds of investments that we'll need to make in our faculty and staff and professional development and technology environment, et cetera, in order to achieve those outcomes. So you'll see that also addressed in the plan. We also conducted a survey, which we'll come to in a minute, of both of current and prospective students and their parents with regard to their expectations about and tolerance for online. And just to give you a quick trailer, it demonstrated that our planned utilization of online modalities is well within those expectations and the willingness of folks to engage in them. So we'll come to them. So then there's obviously we did commission an impact study as a result of early comments. It showed what we anticipated, but it's always nice to have the data. It's been professionally done by a group that does impact studies. In fact, the same group that did our impact study in based on 2013-14 data, which we produced in 2015. So we're able to update that. It helps us understand the impacts that integration will have. It will actually grow economic impact. And it also helps us understand, what has been the economic impact of enrollment decline, having nothing to do with integration, but leading up to 2019, 2020. And again, little trailer, the greatest impact economically comes from the reduction in student spending, which is what happens when 21% of your enrollments are no longer there. And also a change in the way that experts doing impact studies, the multiplier they use to determine how many jobs are supported through an industry's expenditure. Had that multiplier not changed, our economic impact would have grown from 2014 to 2019-20, irrespective of the decline in our enrollments and reduction in our headcount. So we'll come to that in some more detail in a second. Let's see, we have made some additional, last time we spoke about changes, that you'll expect revisions you'll expect to see with respect to the organization, the organizational structure. We've also included, and we'll come to this in a moment as well, recommendations that have been made by working groups on leadership and governance about the possible structures for our councils of trustees. We did not include, we had that information in April. We didn't include it in the original plan because the rationale was that the board does not actually have authority over how council of trustees are structured. That authority rests in this General Assembly. It's determined by statute. But in conversation and again in comment period, there was uncertainty and interest in that topic, interest in that topic. And so we have included the recommendations that emerged through those working groups. And you'll see those in the plan, and we'll get to those in a bit in a minute. We have made a number of changes to the financial section, section 10. We conducted an objective third-party review of our financial projections, which we'll get to in a moment, aligns with our thinking. We reforecast the projections themselves based on new information. We said we would do that. We have new information, the flat tuition voted by the board. In April, the availability of federal stimulus dollars, and that all now factors into projections, you'll see. We have provided protections to universities that have net positive surpluses at the time of integration. That was a big point of concern, and that's now addressed in the plans. And we've included a more succinct and we hope useful and reusable statement of the integration's goals and objectives, so you'll see all that too. There has been a lot of comment about, detail and when's it going to become available on various key issues. So we've beefed up, I guess, the timeline section, section 11, including a whole number of things, including the kind of, obviously, when we'll see critical milestones being met, about the curriculum, what does the path to substantive change review look like for middle states. We'll see where the organizational charts land. when they will land. You'll see when you'd expect a branding and marketing strategy, all the things that we'll be expecting to continue to review with the board in the process defined by Act 50, which is an ongoing, consultative, transparent, and highly accountable process. So you'll see that in the timeline section. And we've clarified in the final and the concluding section that obviously, integration is not a substitute for investment, for state investment. Continuing the theme that we've been developing over the last 3 years, that public higher education is a partnership between the system and the universe and the General Assembly, with each party having specific roles and responsibilities, and obviously investment being a critical component. So I think that is what you will see. I want to get to the new information, but let me pause, take a breath there, and just ask if there are any questions emerging from the kind of quick overview of the major changes resulting from the last month's worth of public comments that you might have before diving into the other information.
And we'll ask board members to use the raise hand feature if you have any questions, since there's a large group.
Where is that, Randy? I can't find it.
Should be right along the bottom.
Yeah, on the bottom, Jan.
You can also just blurt it out, Governor.
Or just blurt it out, yeah.
Go for it.
As long as I interrupted, I did find the raised hand. It just popped up when you said that was magic. So good for you, Randy. Whatever you have going, it's working. The question, though, I wanted to ask is there seems to be a really broad perception that the comments that have been submitted are not publicly available. How is that perception so different from what we've just heard?
Governor Youmans, if I could answer that question, I would probably be working at a communications consulting firm. We have done everything we possibly can and more to ensure that this process is visible and participatory.
Is there a link or someplace I could go to right now that would show me a summary of all
Randy,
the comments?
do you want to put the link in the?
Yeah, Randy, do you?
Well,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so then the question gets to be, how is that distributed, and maybe is there a more effective way of distributing these things in the future?
So the district, I mean, we can always open for comment and adjustment. The mechanisms we're using are the mechanisms that people told us they wanted when we surveyed them about how to communicate about the integrations process.
Fair enough.
So if people want different, we can always do different. But it's we're basically we've done everything we can to gather information about information consumer behavior. We've polled our people. We've asked them. We've responded to what they've asked. This is what we've done.
I think the important thing is, right, okay, thank you very much, Randy, because I think, Jan, specifically your question was about people being able to see other people's comments.
Yes, I think everybody wants to see the big picture.
Okay, all right. So
now, it's one click away from the homepage. So if you're on the homepage, you see integrations up here, you can click there, and you scroll right down here, and it says view public comments received, batch 1, batch 2, and these are uploaded as PDFs that people can scroll through. But batch 1 was uploaded last month. Batch 2 was uploaded this week.
Okay, and so, but there's not a summary kind of issue by issue or anything like that.
So the summary that this deck is that summary.
Okay.
And Randy, I don't know, you might want to just scroll through a couple. We paused on the slide that is the bullets. You want to scroll through the slides that are underneath that.
Sure.
And I think it's important to emphasize the intentionality of putting the raw comments on the website. And that was absolutely to, assure complete transparency. We did not rely on summarizing or presenting in themes, et cetera, in terms of, people seeing what other people had to say. So literally every comment is there. And I don't even think they're edited or filtered for language or anything. I think they are literally the raw comments, every single one.
I think we redacted email addresses.
Yeah. And
and phone numbers if they were available. So Governor Yeoman, this is the deck you saw. We used the same deck we used last time. We've just built on it, and it includes pages like this. Each page has the same format. It tells you what section of the plan. It tells you the topic of the arising from an actionable comment, and it tells you the adjustment that is being made and whether it will result in an update to the plan. And so Randy, if you just want to click through, there you go. So there's some more section 5, which is the academic program stuff. There's section 6, student impacts, section 7, community. And the sections are obviously the sections of the plan. So you have an ongoing, it's basically a change order, if that makes sense. It's an inventory or an index.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you receive the new plans, they will be redlined. So you'll see exactly what changes have been made. You'll have a clean copy, and you'll have this deck, which gives you that summary, that inventory. Here's what we heard. Here's how we responded. Here's the section that you'll see the changes.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it would be possible in a short time to prepare it, but for people who don't have the time to read through all of the raw comments, could you categorize them by there's certain themes that come out in the comments?
And that's what you see here, Governor Yeomans. These are the categories. And so we
Yeah.
categorize them in 2 ways. So Randy, if you want to go to the table, the categorization in the table. So again, this is 34 of the comments to date have actually addressed issues, changes to the plan. Then there's a bunch more which are not actionable, but again, get it, points of clarification. And then others are the majority are viewpoints.
Right. So for example, if we just were to say the theme of transparency, of the total comments, what proportion cited that as a concern?
And
So
that's
a
why
frequency distribution kind of thing.
And that's why we did not go that route, honestly, Governor. I'm not sure that to address with staff, I guess, but the reason we didn't is because there was we just met with all of that skepticism about transparency and accountability. And so the best way to address it is here's the comments. I mean, my experience in the past, honestly, is there it is, there they are. Anybody can look at them and recategorize and do what they will with them. That was at least the logic behind the approach.
Thank you.
And Representative Briggs, and then Representative Roy.
Thank you, Chancellor. I appreciate this update. It's definitely helpful, and I will review the written comments. I watched in real time the hearings, except for 20 minutes that I had to watch later, and it was helpful to listen to. But what I'm a little bit concerned about, since we're talking about public comment, is kind of the timing of when the revised plan will be released, and giving an opportunity for folks to review it and comment, or will that be made at our July meeting? And if that's the case, then I think we need to dedicate a decent amount of time towards that, because what I would be concerned about is giving a week to get this out there and then giving 15 minutes of public comment and
no, quite.
So that's just wanted to pass along that.
No, absolutely. So I think you will get the plan, I believe, next Wednesday. You'll get everything next Wednesday. This document is this will be this deck, which we'll publish this afternoon, critical component, because it is in effect, here's all the changes you're going to see, and then you'll get the revised plans. So you'll get this today, the revised plans next Wednesday, which will be a week before the meeting. And then at the meeting, we have all day on Wednesday, or as much of the day on Wednesday as people care to commit to.
So Wednesday would be an opportunity for more public, and then give the board members time to absorb all that, and then we would vote on Thursday. Is that the thinking?
The idea would be to have, and again, we're in agenda building, so the idea would be have today is the introduction. Now you'll see the full change order, if in effect. It's a multi-slide deck. That'll be available today. The plans will be available a week before the board meeting. I'll have the whole day for discussion, et cetera, and then the vote in the afternoon on the Wednesday. This is the first day of the board meeting, because we have a bunch of budget items to get through in July. They're on the Thursday, and the budget items might look, the budget items are contingent on where the board goes with the vote on that.
Thank you.
Representative Roy.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly reiterate. Am I on?
Yes, you're good.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think anything could be easier than being able to see the public comments. It does take a while to go through them. I've spent, I didn't have a stopwatch, but I have spent hours going through the public comments. It's a very easy format. Anybody can look at them. I encourage all the board members to look at them. The public hearings, I listened to 3 out of the 4. And at some point here, I'm going to listen to the 4th one that I couldn't participate in because of other meetings and stuff. But my question, I guess, is, well, it's more of a comment than a question. Like there's different organizations out there working against this plan, and they're saying that the public's against it and stuff. Well, it seems like I didn't keep exact track, but the public meetings that were on the video, it seemed like about 80% of the people making comments were people that work at the universities. So I think what would be helpful is some kind of breakdown of all the comments at the public hearings, the 4 public hearings, how many of them work at the universities and how many are members of the general public. And, just to kind of gauge things, because, there's going to be a narrative out there that, 80% of the people are against this plan. Well, that's because 80% of the people that testified, work there, and they're going to, they're concerned they're going to be impacted. So I just think it's important that people know anybody had the opportunity to participate in those, and a lot of people didn't. But I think the board and the chancellor and everybody, I think there's been all kinds of opportunities for people to make comments, but we can't force people to make comments. Thank you.
No, that's a good point. Let me work with my staff. And I mean, I'm hearing a general theme about what can we do more to summarize and classify or categorize. Again, I'm just going to say it out loud. There was a strong rationale for not doing that because of the very vocal concerns about transparency. And of course, as soon as you categorize something, you interpret it. And so we were concerned not to do that, but we can, in the time remaining, we'll do what we can to satisfy.
And since Brad mentioned it, I think we're going to talk a little bit about this, but I was a little bit surprised at the lack of student participation. I mean, as a legislator, we don't always hear from everyone who's a stakeholder in this. Usually hear from folks who have a real personal connection. Yes. But as we're doing this for the students, if there's anything, I know there's going to be a survey to get more data from that. If you could share that actual survey. I was a little bit surprised that there wasn't that many students.
Let me comment on that. Let me turn to Alexander and Stephen and Zakaria if they want to chime in. One of the biggest issues in higher education, and particularly in higher education in rural schools, and presidents feel free to chime in, and this is a national issue. This is not a Pennsylvania state system issue. It's an issue of student engagement. The major theme that is addressed in my now countless focus groups with students over 3 years is the challenges of getting students engaged in campus life. It just is. And that is, and it's not just a problem of, engaging students. It has all sorts of ripple effects, graduation rates retention and graduation rates being the biggest impact. There's a reason that athletes complete at much higher rates than other students. There's a reason that students who are involved in associations and clubs, et cetera. So student engagement is an ongoing challenge. And, it's not something we've discussed at length at all at the board, but you're seeing that here. And and I'm happy to stage a workshop bringing in national experts and our local experts on what people do to try to counter to some of the tendencies. But that's what's here. I'm not excusing it. I'm helping to try to create a context for it. Look, we've had 700 comments. They're very, very heartfelt, often incredibly, those of you who worked through the material, as I have, they're very emotional. This is hard stuff. There are 700 of them in a community of 100,000 people. What do we do with that data point?
And Chancellor Greenstein, if I might add, from the student perspective, you know, specifically this past year has been very difficult for many of our students. The engagement level you've seen on multiple campuses has decreased. And this is not because, you know, we can't get our students out and get them to, you know, events online. It's just because there's an element there that they don't have the connection necessarily to their peers and to their universities that they've had in the past being on campus. So a lot of your students, you do see not only the, you know, physically not being there, but the emotional impact as well. And it's caused many of them to disengage. So, you know, now that we have, you know, finalized our semesters across our universities and we're moving into the summer, there's a lot of more opportunities for students to start engaging again. And hopefully we will see, you know, a larger engagement on our campuses as time goes on, because I know many of our universities are preparing our campuses to provide that level of engagement that we have been missing here in the past. So I think once we start moving into the next semester, we will see more student engagement on many different levels, including voices at the state level.
So I'm going to move us along because I really do want to give you an overview to what you're going to see in the deck when it's posted into the associated reports. But, you know, I want to put a pin in. Look, the biggest challenge, we'll talk about it in 2 weeks, that the board faces is change is hard. We have, as an entity, not as individuals, postponed it for years. That's why we're here. We did not get here overnight. This is not a surprise. This is what happens through inaction. We are at a critical point in time. My view, and I've been very clear about it, is that inaction at this stage is highly, highly, highly problematic. I could use other choice words, but I'll spare you. Okay, let me just show you what you're going to see. Some of the new information, again, in response to early comments. We have updated financial projections. Randy, if you just go to the, maybe to the net Northeast integration and yeah, go, no, forget the detail slides. There you go. And you'll see these kinds of tables. We've included the tuition, flat tuition that made it worse. Then we included the federal stimulus money, and then we also included protections for universities that go into integration to protect their reserves for a period of time, and so that made things better. So you'll see improvement in the financial projections, both in the Northeast and the West. If you go to the economic impact study, you will see that the impacts of integration for the West and the Northeast are both positive, an 8.1% increase from 2023 to 2026 in the West, and a 1.9% increase in economic impact. It's because, you know, integration is about stemming the decline and getting to growth. You'll also see the impact of the system's contraction, 2013-14 to 2019-20. It has nothing at all to do with integration. You'll see that the driver of that, and you'll see a reduction in economic impact of 9.5%. That reduction is due almost largely to decline in student spending because there's fewer students to spend, and in the change of the economic multiplier. Randy, if you go to the headcount slide, you will see directly from our SAP system, the headcount reductions. I don't even know where to begin. The 1,500 headcount reductions are presented as, since 2018-19, are presented as layoffs. Facts matter, at least they do to me. Most of those reductions were accomplished through retirement and attrition and reduced reliance on temp contracts, not layoffs. Layoffs are hard. They're disruptive, they're horrible, and they suck. And they suck to do as an administrator. And we've used them sparingly for like 0.5% of our total faculty complement and 2% of our employee complement overall. And compare that to 22% enrollment decline since 2010. And yes, I'm cross because I care about people. And I'm cross because with presidents and union leadership, we have done everything we can to minimize those impacts. President Driscoll at Indiana started this year with about 80 some potential layoffs and landed at 22 because he cares. And I might have got the numbers wrong, Mike, and I apologize.
82 retrenchment letters, 19 retrenchees on June 4.
And why did we do that? Why did we rely so disproportionately on furloughs and retrenchments? Because despite the intempered narrative, which is disruptive and divisive, we are about people. They are our most precious resource. Our universities, our communities, they are families, and every employee is a member of that family. And to portray the reductions as mass layoffs is wrong, and it is dangerous. You'll also see that we conducted a third-party financial review of our projections. We use CLA, that's the group Kristen Larson, which does our audited statement of accounts. You'll see the results pretty much align with our projections, our assumptions, pretty standard stuff. Student survey, didn't talk to students. So we did commissioned a piece of market research asking the fundamental question about students and their tolerance for and expectations about online education. Particularly, what degree of willingness do they demonstrate to engage in some online in order to get a wider range of degrees or majors, or to increase their time, to speed their time to degree, or to reduce the total cost of their degree, the fundamental value propositions of integration. And what we discovered is the vast majority of students, existing PASHE students, not just at the integrated universities, but also at Westchester and Milledgeville, so we get a mix, prospective students and their parents have a high degree of willingness. And frankly, the data align with other research which is beginning to emerge across the industry. Our plans to leverage online to improve the student experience and to expand opportunity and to save, not close, regional universities, which are a critical part of their communities, is entirely in line with student and parent expectations in this part of the 21st century. Facts matter. They matter to me. There's also, finally, I think, councils of trustees. We commissioned, or we had working groups, leadership and government working groups, both regions, consisting of trustees and others. And they came up with a variety of recommendations about how how the councils of trustees might evolve should universities be integrated. I think there were 7 recommendations from both regions, and 6 of the 7 would require statutory change. And so we've added those recommendations. You'll see them in the plan, and we've also added, in effect, a recommendation to the board that should it go forward with integrations, that a working group would be convened to sift through the variety of options, and then should legislative action be required to build and sort of guide a legislative agenda that would result in the necessary statutory changes. So those are the 4 or so pieces of new information commissioned since the early days of comment. Randy, we have
Sam
5,
Smith
and you'll see that in, and the student survey, the economic impact study will be published today. It's 77 pages. I urge you to read it. It's actually really good. It's professionally done. It's nice to have people who know what they're doing when they're doing economic impact studies. And similarly on the student survey, it's a really good piece of market research. That will be about a week. The full survey result will be about a week from now, and all of this will be available to you. I finished 5 minutes with questions.
Board members, you can click raise hand or just speak up if you have a question.
Randy.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Sam. Yeah, Chancellor, I know you share this observation but the last part of your discussion kind of might have made it a little bit muddy in that sense. The two issues that the board has been, part of redesign. One has been the financial sustainability, and the other is integration. And they are really two separate issues. And when we talk about, the retrenchments and the layoffs and those personal impacts on individual employees, both faculty and non-faculty employees, that whole process was really tied to, this is a question. It seems to me that whole process was really tied to the financial sustainability challenge that all 14 schools face to some level. A couple maybe not so much, but hey, if they're not paying attention to it, it's going to be a problem tomorrow if they're not paying attention to it today. But all 14 schools basically had to deal with financial sustainability. Integration's a separate issue. Which, yeah, they dove in these are two different things, although related in our period.
That's correct, Sam. They are two completely different things.
And the reason I asked that question is as you were going through some of that financial sustainability stuff, it seemed that it was kind of blended into this integration discussion. And I just think it's important to recognize that those are two separate things.
Two separate things. Sustainability has happened, and we will continue to have to drive there unless we do something to check the decline. Integration is about that. Sustainability has happened.
And so IUP went through the blood, as Dr. Driscoll wears the emotional scars, if nothing else, of the difficulties. And it is emotional because you are looking at people and saying, I'm sorry, you don't have a job here tomorrow. And it's difficult. IUP went through the big chunk of that this past year. Is it a safe assumption to say that no matter what happens in the next board meeting, that other schools will have to deal with that financial sustainability reality in this coming year?
We're bleeding cash. Yes. We have to get to a financially stable place. We're almost there. Sam, you know this. 2 years ago, I said to the legislature that in 5 years, we would reduce our operational expenditure by $200 to $250 million. Today, we are at $196 million. And that's not all through headcount reduction. It's through a lot of hard work of caring people, sharing services, taking down buildings, that are costing us money, adjusting our headcount as humanely as possible. We went to the General Assembly 3 years ago and we listened to concerns about student affordability, to concerns about aligning our costs with our revenues, to concerns about aligning our programs with employer needs. We have met all of those concerns. All of them. And sustainability is something that we will continue to focus on unless we find a plan to address the structural challenges that we face. Universities, goes back to integration, as they get smaller and they reduce their headcount so they can live within their means, will reduce the opportunities they are able to give to their students, which will further impact their enrollments. And integration addresses that head on. It provides the best of a student-centered residential experience with a broad program array that the communities those universities exist in and their students need. It does those two things. Governor Yeomans, I know you had a hand up. Share.
I did, and I actually have two questions. One is a pretty straightforward, simple one, but my other one is really a follow-on to the previous question, which is, okay, this is directionally correct. It's what we need to do. We're between the rock and the hard place with no air to breathe in between. But suppose just for some reason, one of our assumptions is optimistic or something happens or the environment changes or competitiveness or something like that undermines our ability to achieve financial stability through these actions. Do we envision, or what do we envision for the next step, the next step, the next step? Will we contemplate more integrations, or will we contemplate something completely? Do you have any sense of that at this point, or is it too early? I feel like we're on a journey and this is step one, but it's nice to know where you're going to put your foot down once you raise it to take the next step.
Yes, and we've had some conversation about, I think there's two things, right? That I'm going to interpret that question of having two different parts. One of them is, what do we do if the board decides to not integrate? And then there's another,
okay.
And then there's another question, which is, what do we do if the board decides to integrate, but we're not meeting our indicators? And, you know, and so let me answer that one.
Mhm.
So the integration plan has all the sort of metrics that we use for all of our universities. We will also use and follow and track very closely for the integrated universities. And there's some others thrown in there which have to do with, you know, integration, which is a kind of a unique experience. And so are we able to meet targets and to execute effectively, and our spending patterns, what we expected, et cetera. Our enrollments, you know, what we expect, et cetera. And we will continue to monitor those and adjust as need be, as we would with any other university, thanks to the accountability framework that the board has put in place over the last couple of years. What do we do if it turns out to not work? Is probably the same question that we would have to address ourselves to. What do we do if the board decides to?
Okay, fair enough. My second question is much more straightforward, I think, and that is, in the studies that have been done, has there been specific look at any disproportionate impact on a certain race, ethnicity, LGBTQ, anything like that? Do we know whether certain populations are disadvantaged by these moves?
So our expectation is that I'm going to speak in terms of students have historically been underserved, that they would be better served. And the rationale is that because of the integration process, very smart people, the working groups, have looked at all the functions university serves and basically said, how do we build those functions anew? Because that's what we're talking about doing. And we looked at all of those activities through a kind of diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. And there is a section of the report. It was the only, so we put the plans were reviewed in a variety of ways, including specifically how they would impact underrepresented students. And the net result is the expectation is that they would disproportionately benefit those students because there's a high level of concentration on student success, on workforce, on financial aid, on career services, et cetera, that comes naturally out of a process where you're basically having an opportunity to reform all of the student-based supports.
Thank you.
There are no other hands right now.
I'm not, yes.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Bogle.
I'm not quite sure, Mr. Chancellor, to your response to that question. How are those who have historically been underserved going to be better served by this plan?
Because we are retooling all of the student supports that are so consequential for those students, including student advising, student health and wellness counseling, student financial aid processing, emergency aid processing, that those plans to retool all of those critical functions have been developed specifically with improving outcomes for underserved students.
I don't want to take up too much time today, but somebody's going to have to show me in a different and understandable way, what does that really mean?
Okay.
And Sam Smith has your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. That kind of raised a specific question I had earlier, Chancellor. As you know, as we know, the concerns with online education that have been raised are something I think are valid, that we need to look at it and certainly analyze. And I know that you have addressed some of that. And part of the response document suggested that we would be looking at how that online system would work, what our reliance would be within the the two groups of three. But it seems to me that isn't part of that process, shouldn't it include all 14 to kind of to get at your response to Mr. Bogle, is that shouldn't all 14 be part of that figuring out how we use online to be supportive to the integrated schools? Don't they all dovetail and have to be part of the all 14 schools at some level?
Yeah, and I think we have the structures in place to ensure that that is happening. But I think we also need to attend to the fact we've got there's a sense of urgency surrounding several of our universities. And we have to address that urgency with appropriate clock speed. It isn't entirely clear to me that we can address those needs at the rate and pace we need to address them while bringing everybody else along in everything that we're doing. We certainly try and communicate, and we have an ELG structure, and our functional leaders meet together and we engage with the faculty council in this leadership structure, so the information sharing is great and extensive, and the opportunities grow out of it. But I don't want to underestimate the time that it takes to bring 14 institutions along in some of these transformative changes versus how much time we have to address the urgent needs that 4 or 5 of our universities are feeling. So I just need to balance those two things.
That raises a different question and a different set of options we need to look at. Those who need immediate help and those who don't. And I like to follow through with Mr. Smith's question. You responded with the immediacy and immediate needs of some, but at the same time, I'm not saying you're deferring the needs of others, but I'd like to understand, and I don't need to be asking a whole lot of questions because I'm the newest guy on the block here, but I certainly want to understand what's going on, and I know I don't know. What I do know is we can't continue to do what we have done. And that didn't just happen. This has been a train coming for a while. But I want to make sure, what is it that we're really trying to do and why? What are the immediate needs now that that question has been posed? What are the longer term needs? And you refer frequently to sustainability. That means for all of our tomorrows, for me, that's what sustainability means. But then I want to know, based upon what your response was to Mr. Smith, your response was there are some needed right now, and there's some who don't need it right now. Then that poses another question. What do we do that separates those who need it right now as opposed to those who need it tomorrow, next week, or next month?
And I think actually, Mr. Bogle, if I may, that begins to get to Governor Yeoman's question earlier. Because our future as a system looks fundamentally different if we are unable to respond to the urgent and immediate needs faced by 4 or 5 universities. Fundamentally different. And that question we address. So, I mean, and it gets to Governor Yeoman's, I think, question. It is where the board will be, should it determine to not pursue integrations, and or should it determine to pursue integrations and find itself in 2 or 3 years with integrations not achieving the results that have been hoped for.
As an outsider, not knowing anything, it is clear that, like I said, this has been coming for a while. But now you're making it clear that there are different issues here that we must address. On the academic side, how do we intend to prepare the educational needs? Then the financial needs, which you're, once again, your response was, there's some who need it right now, and you're passionate about that, and I respect that in an effort to save the institution. I do. But I need to understand, as the newest kid on the block, what does that really mean? What does that translate into me? Since one day I'm going to be asked to vote.
Yep, and you will. I look forward to our onboarding session to give you the sort of the penny tour. So right now, universities that are struggling are relying on others that are struggling less to support them. And it is dragging those other universities down. That is the fundamental challenge we're trying, and that is an urgent need. An urgent need. So how do you address that challenge while maintaining all of those universities are struggling because they're so important to their students and their communities. And that's what integration is about. And yes, it has longer term impacts on the shape and operation of the system, but I am simply trying to advise as CEO that in my read of our history, we have looked for and found all sorts of useful ways to delay taking essential action, which is why we are here.
So if I
Thank
may,
you.
thank you. If I may, Dan, because we're 11 minutes over time. First, I want to just say that, you know, in some sense, we may be talking past each other. And I think, you know, offline meetings and also an orientation of our new board members, et cetera, you know, will help ameliorate that. Dan, you're talking about what sustainability addressed and the need for us to keep vigilant. And you know, Mr. Bogle, obviously you're looking at the needs of all students in all of our universities, and I understand that. So what I'm going to say is that we will sort of align those two concepts. And I want to stress that the combination of sustainability and this initial $200 investment over 4 years will enable us to do that. Okay. What we will develop in terms of student supports, advising, career services, emergency aid, et cetera, that will be, you know, that will be for everyone. That is going to be for everyone. And there's, you know, it's only a question of everybody, you know, feeling that they're ripe and ready, right, to introduce some of these kinds of initiatives. And I think, you know, our universities all want them. So I don't see that as an issue. And I see this $50 million investment this year as targeted toward redesign efforts that affect those of our universities that need it most, but not at all precluding getting on board all of the supports and other initiatives we're talking about for students. But just to make you, you know, again, aware of the process, unfortunately, we're not a company and we can't order it to be done right from the CEO's office and the chairman of the board, and boom, it happens. We have a process, we have levels of management authority, obviously, et cetera, at our universities. A lot of what we're talking about will affect provisions that are in union contracts. So a lot of it has to be negotiated, particularly things around advising and counseling. So with all due haste, we will proceed, and every single student will benefit in this system. And I'm not saying that to say that's going to take 5 or 10 years. That's happening now, and it's going to continue to happen with all due, you know, haste. But when Dan's talking about, you know, quote, those that need it most, that's what he's referring to. He's referring to, you know, those universities that we have to make sure are strong in order that the system stays strong. So as I said, we'll certainly get into more details about that, and we'll make sure everything is clear and clearly understood. Okay, I'm going to adjourn the meeting now.
And Cindy, Senator Schwenk was the last person.
I'm sorry, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
And she'll be our last hand.
I am so sorry. Please, Senator Schwenk. You're on mute.
Thank you. I'm off now. I appreciate this. Just to you know, round out our conversation regarding the integration and getting the feedback, may I make a suggestion that we add to our website frequently asked questions with answers, So one of the things that I felt we could have done better is to actually respond to actionable comments. For example, the NCAA issue or the issue of middle states evaluation. There are answers to some of those things. And I think we should post those.
And Senator, they're all on our website. Randy, do you want to show the FAQs, including the answers specifically to the questions that you've just asked? And those FAQs are updated dynamically, and they have been updated in response to comments we've received. So that category of comment, which was not actionable, it was that second category, and I can't even remember what it was called now. And there was like 100 and some of them, led to further updates to the FAQs. So we have been dynamically updating FAQs throughout the entire planning process, including the public review and comment period. And so Randy is—
This is one time when I'm really happy to be proven wrong, but it's probably good to just reiterate that is available. Then the second thing I would ask is that, we look at that $50 million and that commitment over 4 years. What's the budget plan for that? I would certainly like to see that. And knowing that we were not able to get the Nellie Bly scholarship program legislation passed, and the funds that we receive were not necessarily for that, but if we can address the issue of student scholarships in some way, affordability, as well as the, and I think this is part of it, the diversity, equity, and inclusion piece of what we've been talking about at previous meetings. Thank you.
So let me just, on the budget piece, and this is important, and board members can consider and get back to me and to chair. So we're planning Wednesday to be all about integration in the way we've spoken about. Great opportunity to discuss, to digest, to back and forth, spend the whole day. The second day is about budget.
Okay.
It's not just the 50 million, it's the allocation of the state appropriation.
Correct.
It's how we allocate. Remember, we did the pension obligation bond?
Yes.
There's a lot of money in that, including for next year, like $26 million. And they're all related. And they're all related to what we do with integration. How we use money will be different depending on which path we go down. How we're able to bring other universities along in some of this transformative, if we're deciding to not address the challenges that our universities are facing, we will then have to basically take money that we have and use it to shore them up so that other universities are protected, which significantly limits the opportunity to do all of the transformative student-facing things that improve student outcomes, expand opportunity, address DEI issues, et cetera. And it's not, it's a matter of fact. And we can't have it all ways. So that's the logic, integration, and then depending on where we land with integration, budget.
Okay, I'll look forward to seeing that then.
Yeah.
Understood. Thank you.
No more hands, Madam Chair.
All right, very good. Well, thank you all very much. We look forward to continuing the conversation and to seeing everybody at our public board meeting July 14th. Randy, is there any other housekeeping?
We're all good. Everything that we're doing today will be online.
Very good. All right. Thank you all very much. Have a terrific day.